Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or it's 2 a.m. Go to bed already. This is Eagle Eyes on Tech, and I am Eagle Falcon. Welcome back again for yet another week in which there is quite a bit to talk about. This time, though, it's all in one topic. So, despite the 4th of July, there's still quite a bit that has in fact happened. If you're in mainstream news, there was a metric ton of stuff, but we are here to stick with the tech news. So let's talk about something that actually is kind of relevant to, I don't know, a good chunk. It's definitely relevant to me. Might be relevant to you. But Verizon plans to change their prices and plans. And it is going to result in the prices going up. But also the data caps changing quite a bit. So, right off the bat, this headline to say that Verizon to hike prices on plans would offer more data, it sounds negative. But it's not really. Let's go over the details. So, the way Verizon does their plans is that they split up the data plans as small, medium, large, XL, XXL, and I think there's even a triple XL, but I'm not sure. But anyway, on the low-end S plan, it was $30 a month. It plans to go up to $35, but the data is going to be doubled. It's going to be 2 gigs of data instead of 1, which, honestly, 1 gigabyte of data, it's a little insulting, really. And I do welcome that change, because, my God. The medium plan is going to go up by $5 to $50 a month, and the amount of data it's going to get is going to increase by 1 as well. It's going to go from 3 gigabytes to 4 gigabytes. Okay. That, again, also seems reasonable to me. The large plan is going to go up by $10 to $70 a month. That's actually the one I am on. I'm on the large plan, and that's going to increase from 6 to 8 gigabytes of data. Which means that if you wanted to be at 6, which is kind of about where my usage was every month, there really is no spot to be at. I'm either too low or now way too high. The XL plan is going to go up by $10 to $90 a month. You'll be getting 16 gigabytes data up from 12. And then lastly, the XXL plan will cost $10 more at $110, but you'll get 24 gigabytes instead of 18. The other kind of interesting thing to note here is that this is kind of also up on the story I covered last week, in which Verizon was supposed to be adding down the road a rollover data plan and a carryover plan. What this means is that if you go over your limit, rather than being charged additional, you wouldn't be charged additional, but your bandwidth and your speeds would get throttled down to roughly half or 1/3 of what it is currently. In addition, any unused data will roll over. So this is actually a bad example because I went over a little bit on mine, so I got charged a little bit extra this month. But let's say I was 2 gigs under. That means those two unused gigs would move over to my next month. To which I welcome this quite a bit. Now, this article says that there was a press conference held on Wednesday to reveal all this. I, however, could not find anything, any sort of coverage of the conference. I'm not sure if it was postponed or what the heck happened, or if people are just like, yeah, okay, the exact stuff happened, nobody cared. So we will see how things go. So I want to go over to this next little story here. So last week we had rumors of Google building their own smartphone. Their very own Google Android-based smartphone where they would control the hardware. I was skeptical of it, but I also welcome it. That if it was true, just going, hey, whatever floats their boat. And more details will come out before I'd go good idea, bad idea. This is an exclusive from Android Police saying that Google is planning to build 2 smart Android Wear watches to complement the 2 Android phones they are building. Now, I could go over this article's confidence level, their evidence, blah, 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 everything they say about how likely this is to actually happen. Instead, I'm going to go over why. Not as why are they going to do this, but why do this in the first place? I mean, Google making their own smartphone, the only reason to do that is if they have some sort of killer feature to implement that no other manufacturer is doing. The watch is the same thing. What is the feature? According to this article, there really isn't one. So what's the point? What's the point of any of this? That's where a lot of this just starts to not add up. Like, at all. The whole point of Android was to use the old Windows strategy, to put the software out and let those who professionally make hardware do their thing. And that's how we've gotten devices like this right here. The thin, light smartphones with a unique look and additional features. Now, granted, some of the manufacturers have done and gone to make very silly choices with the software overlay. But for the most part, it's been pretty much what it is. I mean, they also have the Nexus line. It all just seems very odd, very un-Google-like to want to control everything. It kind of reminds me a lot of the Microsoft Surface, on the grounds that the Surface was just another Windows 10 device, while Microsoft is still offering Windows 10. And I know the whole point of that was the Surface was supposed to be a blueprint, a template, if you will, for the other manufacturers to get inspired off of. Well, in the Surface's case, that's true. There are plenty of Surface knockoffs now in the Windows area. A lot of them improve on what the Surface did, and a lot of them, well, were Acer and therefore fell on their face. But yet, the Surface is still out there. It's still being refreshed on a regular basis. Something weird is going on in the world of computer software and hardware. Especially if these rumors are true. It's going to be something to keep an eye on. And really, if I was Dell, HP, Lenovo, I'd be a little worried. Because more and more, it looks like companies like Microsoft and Google, the ones that make the software, want to be more and more like Apple, where they control the software and the hardware completely. That has to be making them nervous. Let's shift gears a bit here. In the world of encrypting literally everything that is done with everyone, Facebook is adding a function to the Messenger app called Secret Conversations. Basically, it does two things. One, it adds end-to-end encryption on the hardware level, so that, that only the sender and the reader can read the message. In addition, you can put a self-destruct timer on it so that the message disappears after a certain amount of time. Sound familiar? It should. It's basically WhatsApp. Basically a whole bunch of other message services that are starting to pop out now, where the messages vanish very quickly. It's kind of interesting that ever since the who was it? Not the DOJ. Was it the CIA? Oh, whichever government three-letter acronym was breached out because of Edward Snowden. That had found out they were tapping the internet directly to skim off data. Like a metric ton of data. These sort of apps are becoming more and more and more popular. On one hand, yes, the government can no longer find out I am sending lewd messages to my girlfriend that I don't have or whatever. But on the other hand, if someone's planning something nefarious, that's much harder to find out as well. So, kind of a double-edged sword there. And in the end, I still have extremely mixed feelings about the whole thing, because we're going to extreme levels to make sure that our silly little everyday messages cannot be spied on. Which I think is good, though excessive. But on the other hand, it's much harder for law enforcement to do their job and stop massive sort of organized efforts to cause death and mayhem. And of course, that's always going to bring up a conversation that nobody is comfortable having. And in the end, I don't like having that conversation either, because I'm stuck somewhere in the middle, and I'm so wishy-washy in the whole matter, I can't even tell you what the correct answer is. Or what I think the correct answer is. Maybe one day a solution will come out that'll have us feeling a little bit better about everything. Which then actually does bring me over to this infamous big time story. So, I have to talk about this because I have been minimizing how much Facebook or YouTube or whatever live streaming would actually have in the world. I have been just kind of downplaying it all the way. Just going, no one's going to do this, it's not going to amount to anything, it's blah blah blah. So, it's time for me to admit when I'm wrong. I was wrong. I said before that Facebook live streaming wouldn't do anything in the grand scheme of things. No one would use it. Clearly, after this, I was incorrect. Very much so. So, I'm going to go over what we do know. Or at least what I know. A couple were pulled over for a traffic stop. I believe the article said that it was because of a taillight out. Or something of that matter. It was something minor. Where more than likely, if everything went right, they would have gotten a written warning and that's it. The driver said that he was a concealed carry holder as he went to reach for his wallet. The officer told him to bring up, actually what it was, that the officer said, I need to see your license registration. I can't remember exactly how it was said, but basically in the end, the officer gave terribly conflicting instructions. He said, keep your hands where I can see them, keep them up, but also get your license. This is after the officer, this is after the driver admitted that he was a concealed carry holder and he was armed. So, the driver had his hands up and then slowly took one hand down to reach for his wallet, and that's when the officer shot him. This is when the video kicks in. The girlfriend then started live streaming the aftermath after her husband was shot. The husband is laying back, holding his chest as she was shot. And I'm not going to show the video, but I want you to listen.
Stay with me. We got pulled over for a busted tail light in the back.
Right,
and the police just, he's covered. They killed my boyfriend. He's licensed. He's licensed to carry. He was trying to get out his ID and his wallet out his pocket, and he let the officer know that he had a firearm and he was reaching for his wallet, and the officer just shot him in his arm. We're waiting for a back. I will, sir.
Okay.
No worries. I will.
I apologize for that.
He just shot his arm off. We got pulled over on Larpener.
I told him not to reach for it. I told him to get his hand out.
All right, so the officer sounds panicked. The driver obviously is in a lot of pain. This goes to my next point. The streamer, the girlfriend. Why on earth was she so calm? My God! I don't care if it was someone that I loved or not next to me. If someone I was driving with was just shot, I think you'd be a little bit more excited than that. News reporters have had more emotion than this woman. And that just, something seems really off about the whole thing. Now, granted, the officer is clearly in the wrong here. Clearly, he's in the wrong. At the very least, this officer is more than likely going to lose his job. I don't see a scenario where he doesn't get discharged in disgrace. It may also be possible that charges may come to him, but I think that's less likely. Though that's also going to depend on the status of the driver. I don't know whether the driver passed or not. But what does it say about our society when something like that happens and it doesn't even faze us? That was the point I wanted to get to. And on top of that, these sort of scenarios definitely down the road, YouTube and Facebook streaming and Periscope are definitely going to play a much bigger role than I originally anticipated. And I am hitting myself for not seeing this coming. I should have seen this coming a mile away. Let's shift out of depressing news. Because honestly, that's the darkest today's going to go. And it is something that needed to be talked about. The fact that we need to be more aware of our surroundings. We need to be more sensitive about the whole thing. I mean, your boyfriend just got shot. I mean, god damn, man. Anyway, iOS 10 to bring forth more the ability to make it easier to be an organ donor. I'm going to be real honest. If it weren't for the fact that this source comes from Information Weekly, I would have assumed it would have came from The Onion. It sounds so surreal, doesn't it? Now, it does make some sense in the fact that Apple's founder Steve Jobs would have more than likely been alive today if he was able to get an organ transplant, and also went with real medicine much earlier on. So in any case, what this is that the iOS Health Kit app in iOS 10 will allow you to be registered into the National Donate Life Registry to be an organ donor, if you so choose. I see nothing wrong with this. I think it's kind of cool. On the other hand, there's also just a little bit that's kind of creepy about your new phone or tablet asking, would you like to be an organ donor? It comes off just like a little odd. But that's where we are today. For better or for worse. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we've got the fun stuff to talk about. The RX 480's power problem being resolved, the GTX 1060 being announced, and of course, the 600-pound gorilla in the room, Pokemon Go. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Eagle Eyes on Tech. I'm Eagle Bell. So, you remember micro SD cards? On the off chance you don't, SD cards are the little memory, or actually they're fairly big. They're like this big. They're memory chips that go into cameras, and they store a lot of flash data on them. Micro SD are SD cards roughly the size of my fingernail that fit into phones that store, again, a lot of data. Like, those can get up to like 128 gigabytes, possibly even bigger. Actually, no, the micro SDs, I want to say they capped at I want to say they capped at 64 now that I think about it. Whatever, regardless. So Samsung has come out with a new format. It is called the UFS card. These things start at 32 gigabytes and go all the way up to 256 gigabytes. Now, this doesn't sound like much until you look at the size of this. They are about as thick as this card that I'm holding in my hand right now, which is roughly 1/4 of a millimeter. In addition, they are even smaller than a micro SD card. They have read speeds of up to 350 megabytes per second, so about half a gigabyte. And we're talking gigabytes, not gigabits. That is massive throughput. And sequential writes of 170 megabytes per second. That's crazy. That sort of throughput is crazy. There is no longer going to be a delay in trying to record 4K video. Like, even after I build my next rig with what I'm planning, if I wanted to try and capture at 4K and then send it out, there would be delays out the wazoo through the stream. And eventually something will get desynced. There'd be none of that with this. It's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, get ready for that down the road. And UFS, that stands for Universal Flash Storage. So, you know, in 2017, when that's all the rage out there in the world, you can go, oh yeah, I've known about that. That's old news. A little more of a tidbit. So let's talk about this little, this thing here, switching gears here. We have the Phoenix Tech's new CPU cooling alternative. I don't even know what to say to this. This is a unique piece of cooling here. So in any case, it's a very small, compact cooler. It's designed for mini ITX rigs. And this is an air cooler, not a water cooler. But it's such a high-powered fan inside this thing that it uses both the standard 4-pin, which is used normally for most fans, and that's to control the fan speed and everything. And then it uses an additional 6-pin to power this fan even further than that. Thing maxes out at 2,650 RPM. Which is pretty high for most fans. And yeah, this cooler is capable of drawing 35 watts of power to be able to handle this. Now, the whole purpose is to have a high-powered air cooler in a very small space. This thing can compete with water coolers using no liquid. There are 8 on both sides of this high-powered fan. There are 2 heat sinks with 4 heat pipes in each one. The heat pipes are copper. That's not uncommon. The fins are aluminum. Also not uncommon. This thing's just hilarious. No pricing on this thing is available yet. I lied. There is pricing on this thing. I didn't read down to the last one. Pricing is at $149 for this thing. And no, that's not a case, that's a heatsink. I know it's hard to believe, but it is in fact just a heatsink. So let's get to one of the big things everyone's want to talk about. Last week. Actually, no, I didn't get to talk about this last week. We ran out of time. So last week, the RX 480 did come out. It is a $200 to $240 graphic card, depending on how much graphic RAM you want on it. But one of the oddball things that one of my sources found out is that this 150 watt card was drawing 152 watts. The power consumption was a little higher than the specifications. In fact, upon further looking into it, because they did more research on it afterwards, where it was drawing the power from was on the PCI Express bus, which means that the slot that it was sitting in was getting hotter than normal because of this. Now, this has been fixed with a new driver update. Here's the thing. If you want the most performance this thing can get, you're going to want to not enable the compatibility mode that has been enabled on this thing. Now, if you're doing multiple crossfire with this card, if your case does not provide adequate cooling, as in it's just like one intake and one exhaust fan and that's it, then enable the compatibility. If you're doing 2 or 3 intakes, 1 exhaust, and then additional exhaust out the top, by all means, you got the airflow, don't bother. Get as much performance as you can out of this card. So in any case, that's been now looked at more thoroughly. It is not a problem, and there is a fix out now for it that will resolve the problem. Now, unfortunately for AMD, while AMD has been playing a lot of checkers in how they've been releasing graphic cards, NVIDIA's been playing chess. So AMD went ahead, released the RX 480, and they just went triple jump king me. Then, not even a week later, NVIDIA announces that of the existence of a GTX 1060. Putting the bishop out and saying check. The GTX 1060, based on the numbers that NVIDIA's released, undoubtedly outperforms the RX 480 by roughly 10% or so. If you want a better measurement, based on the numbers they've given, the 1060 is about half of a GTX 1080. The GTX 1060 will be selling for $250 or $300 if you get the Founders Edition. This brings me to this whole concept of the Founders Edition. NVIDIA, stop with the Founders Edition. Stop making an exclusive card. Because you know what's being frustrating right now? Is the fact that you're putting resources into making your own cards with your own coolers and calling them Founders Edition and charging more for them. While your partners that actually make the bulk of your cards are starving for their stock to come in. There's still no 1080s out there. There's a handful of 1070s out there. NVIDIA, you make graphic cards. Start putting out the parts for graphic cards. This isn't hard. It just simply isn't hard. This card will actually be officially out. Not next week, but the week after. It's supposed to be launching on July 19th. That gives AMD some time to plan their next move. And for the love of God, AMD, your next move, you better not be touching any checkers pieces. But now let's talk about some craziness. So naturally, as more and more of the GTX 10 series cards come out, rumors are leaking out about when the next Titan card will come out. The Titan card is the absolute highest end, top of the line gaming card that NVIDIA puts out. Normally when NVIDIA does this, the Titan card is based on a souped up version of whatever GPU their 1080 Ti or their X80 Ti runs on. Now I gotta go into a little bit of detail to describe the level of insanity this rumor runs on. Internally, NVIDIA calls their graphic cards by a G number. Usually it's G, the letter of the architecture. In this case, since we're on the Pascal architecture, it's GP. And then 10, and then the number that matters. The lower the number, the more powerful it is. So, to go back on this right here. The GTX 1060 is running the GP106 GPU. The 1070 is running on the GP104. Will there be a GP105? We don't know. Normally, their highest end part, NVIDIA saves for what's called the Tesla line. The Tesla line are graphic cards that are built for supercomputers. That's why this particular one, if you're watching the video version, has no fan. It goes into a server and the fans in the server cool it. That's also why there's no video out on this card either. This rumor claims that the GTX Titan P, which is the worst name I've ever heard in the history of computer parts, will run on the GP100 GPU. If this rumor is true, that means that the Titan, rather than being a slightly better version of the GTX 1080 Ti, it would give the performance of a supercomputer within a gaming rig. Now, what do I think about this? I think that's extremely unlikely. For starters, that would make the Titan would end up going up to being a $2,000 to $3,000 graphic card, because the amount of R&D that goes into the level 100 GPU is insane. That's why it only goes to the supercomputer developers. Second, that name. There is no way that's the real name. Now, I get it. The P stands for Pascal. But come on. Do you want to go buy a card called the Titan P? The jokes write themselves. The chat's writing the jokes right now. I mean, right there. Titan PEE. Or Titan PP. Come on. Look. NVIDIA, if you somehow, and I don't know how you would find this obscure as all heck tech podcast, but if my words are somehow reaching your ears, do not, under any circumstances, call this the Titan P. Call it the Titan 10. Your series number is the 10. Just call it the Titan 10, the GTX Titan 10. That is worlds better than the Titan P. It's just no. In any case, these rumors say this will be released at what did it say the event was? At Gamescom in Germany, mid-August 17th to the 21st. So, that's what the rumors say. I don't believe it. Especially since, as this article from the guys who are even more obsessive about this sort of stuff than I am, that the Tesla card for the Pascal isn't due until Q4. This seems extremely unlikely that this is going to happen. But we'll find out. We got 10 minutes left. Let's talk about Pokemon Go. So, if you don't know, Pokemon Go launched... When was it? It was Thursday, I believe. And what it is that it's Pokemon it advertises itself as Pokemon on the iPhone and iOS to go ahead to capture Pokemon in the real world. And already this thing is turning out to be a lot more popular than it already was, and good lord, this thing had so much hype behind it. Now that it's out, here's the things that are being said. For starters, there is a high number of people that are playing Pokemon Go while driving. Don't do this! For the love of God, don't do it. Let's just get that out there right off the bat. Don't play Pokemon Go and drive. Now, one other thing that a lot of people were worried about would happen was that people breaking into houses to go and find Pokemon. I can tell you right now, the radius in which you're allowed to just be close enough, God, it's like 30 yards. He drives an 18-wheeler while playing I do not drive an 18-wheeler while playing Pokemon Go. Bad end. Bad end. But in any case, the way the game works is that the servers use an algorithm to place Pokemon randomly throughout the world. But it has, like, grass Pokemon showing up in parks, bug Pokemon showing up in wilderness, water Pokemon showing up near lakes, etc., etc., etc. No, I don't drive an anything wheeler while playing Pokemon Go. Let's get back to the point here. You don't actually have to fight the Pokemon, weaken them. You just have to toss a ball, and you have to play a timing game with it in order to capture Pokemon. Alright? The way you get Pokeballs is that you visit landmarks that are called Pokestops. And it's like, some people have said once every 5 minutes. I've only done it once a day. But in case, you go there and you get a few Pokeballs and some items. Alright? In addition, there are gyms throughout the world, and there are 3 teams, a red team, a yellow team, and a blue team, that fight for control over these gyms. That's pretty much the game so far. Now, this game is currently only available in Australia, New Zealand, and the US. I assume it's also available in Japan. I have no idea how on earth it could not be in Japan. Now, even though it's been released, I am gonna flat out say this, and you can disagree if you want, but I will lay a solid case for this claim. This game is not finished. This isn't even a real release. This is an open beta. For starters, these servers aren't ready for it. They just simply aren't. I want to say the few days I've played, the server uptime was roughly 30%. On top of that, their own version of this game is 0.26. Even they're admitting they're not done yet. What clearly happened here was another case of Game Freak went out and said, we're releasing this July. And the actual company who built this game, which is this, I can't remember what they're, who is it? Niantic. Niantic, who also builds the actually really popular mobile game Ingress, just pushed it out. Just figured, said, close enough, boom, go. The bottom line, this game isn't finished. It's maybe half done. I can't even tell you the number of times I've had to force quit the game because it locks up. It does it so unbelievably much. So, for those of you in the rest of the world, in the UK, in Canada, I think it's going to be a month before those places see this game. And you know what? You're not missing much. It's a nice game that can get you out of the house, to get you go and actually do this crazy thing called take a walk. But it's not what it is. It's not a traditional Pokemon game on a mobile phone. It's none of that. It is its own unique animal. And honestly, that's fine. When this game is actually done, when it's ready to be used, I think it'll be good. It'll be a fun little thing. But if you're looking for Pokemon X and Y on your phone, that's not the case. And for those of you who think that no, you're just going to go and get in your car, for starters, not really, actually. Actually, you want to know, based on where the Pokestops are, this game is perfect to play. We'll go riding your bike. Getting a bike and just quickly taking a quick stop at each of the big landmarks, which appears to just be park signs, police stations, and other kind of unique landmarks in your town. Like down by me, the Ronald McDonald statue is one of them for some reason, even though the statue was stolen once. A historical strip mall is one of the Pokestops. This piece of art that's in front of a police station is one of them. But as far as taking a car, not really. It takes you longer to find a parking spot or a good place to stop at each one of these places. I mean, yeah, you can go ahead and be an asshole and just stop mid-traffic to go get your stop, but you're gonna get a ticket. It's inevitable. There's no way around it. So no. The game isn't finished, but it's still playable. If you're looking for a finished Pokemon game, this is definitely not it. And if you're in an area where it's not out yet, relax. We're dealing with the headaches now, so you don't have to. That's it from me, everyone. Feel free to catch us on YouTube, iTunes, and whatever source you feel like. Take care, everyone. Rest well.